This is not an easy topic for many parents to navigate because they want to believe their government, they want to believe their pediatrician.
If vaccines were so safe, they wouldn't have to take liability away from the vaccine manufacturers. And there are millions of kids around the world who are unvaccinated, like ours, who are completely healthy.
Hello and welcome back to M4L Academy. My name is Missy Karwowski, Director of M4LA, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. If you're new here, you can think of us as the school for parents, grandparents, and friends fighting to preserve liberty in America, starting with parental rights. In an incredible update recently, DC just flipped the food pyramid, literally. With the new 2025 to 2030 dietary guidelines, federal health leaders brought back a pyramid that prioritizes protein, full-fat dairy, healthy fats, vegetables, and fruits, while moving grains to the bottom and putting ultra-processed foods and added sugar on notice. It's about time. In short, eat real food. Hopefully, our school lunches will see some major improvements as well. Against this backdrop, today's interview with Drs. Stu and Teri Warner is perfectly timed. They've been featured on national media and are on a mission to reverse the alarming trend of chronic illness in our children. If you believe in the power of informed choice and natural health, you won't want to miss their insights on how to break free from the Generation RX mindset. These longtime wellness advocates cut through the noise with practical family-first strategies for raising resilient, healthy kids. After this, you'll be ready to navigate label landmines, avoid those sugar bomb breakfast cereals, and bring common sense nutrition to your kitchen table and to your school board. Welcome back to class. Welcome, Dr. Warner, to the program. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. We're excited to be here.
Yes, it's our pleasure, and we really appreciate all the great work that Moms for Liberty does to help parents get empowered for their children's education and freedom.
Well, thank you, because it is only through partnering with amazing people like yourself who are making incredible headway in this movement and have been fighting for a long time before it became a movement. So that's actually what I'd love to start with. If you could just share a little bit of your background, what led you to focus in on holistic health? What sent you down that path?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And, we've been doing this over 30 years. We've helped over 10,000 kids and pregnant women restore their optimum health. And it's really important to, the essence of our approach is getting to the root cause and understanding that the body has a tremendous ability to heal itself and to be well. And we want to give that child every opportunity in health, wellness, and life to be the best that God intended them to be.
I love that. I think that's so important and so true. We have been living in a world where it seems like we're not looking for the body to just be healthy, but instead there's a pill for everything is the way that it feels. So did you expect to see this movement become such a national and really international thing, or what motivated you to join the MAHA movement?
Well, I think, as you said, we've been in this for a long time, and we were fighting that fight before there was a MAHA movement, and creating the space so that people could see that, it's good business for Big Pharma to have sick kids on drugs, having this generation that is the sickest in history, that is the first generation to potentially die before their parents, is completely the opposite of what God intended for us. And so we saw that from, early on, right in college, and seeking our practice, initially thought we really want to focus on kids and making kids healthy. We saw the downward spiral that was happening, and it's gotten worse and worse over these last few decades. And now it's at a cataclysmic record. So that if we don't turn this ship around and steer it the right way, it's going to have just epic consequences. So thank goodness that our friend Bobby Kennedy is in the position that he is now as HHS secretary, and really helping to navigate that to be able to bring light on a national and, as you said, an international level, that having the sickest generation of kids in history is not okay. That is not normal. And although they keep shifting the goalposts and trying to normalize illness and sickness as though that's just the natural state of being, all kids are supposed to be sick and on drugs. That is not correct. That is not how it always was, and that is not how it should be. And so people started to realize, as more and more children, now we're seeing up to 70% of kids are having chronic illness. That's not the way it was supposed to be. And it wasn't like that, even if you jump back into the 80s, certainly into the 70s, we'll see just in a generation or two how this has had, just these dire consequences. And so more and more parents now have said, like, we're aware of this. This is not okay. We need to make changes. And they want our government to stand behind that as well as them doing it on a local level and standing up for their own kids.
So you just highlighted one of the most important things, I think, and that is I think it was the statistic that probably grabs the attention of most people, that we're living for the first time when our children have a likelihood of dying before us because of health reasons, which is just absolutely shocking. So when we're looking at these health challenges that American children are facing, what would you say are the biggest ones? You talked about chronic health challenges. What would you say are the biggest health challenges facing American children?
Yes, you said it very well. It's shocking. It's alarming. I mean, it's gut-wrenching what's happening to our kids, since the normal state of our children should be health. And we're witnessing every childhood illness has skyrocketed over the last 10 to 20 years. Asthma's doubled. Allergies are rampant. 1 in 31, according to last year's statistics, children are diagnosed with autism. 1 in 9 children diagnosed with ADHD. There's 16 million visits made to doctors' offices every year for ear infections. Diabetes is out of control. Colic, reflux. 1 in 4 or 5 children are learning delayed or learning disabled, according to our government. Our kids are getting sicker and sicker every year, and parents are desperately looking for better approaches and solutions. And that's what we've been doing, is partnering with these parents so that we can help overcome the childhood illness and restore their health. We solved the chronic disease epidemic in kids 30 years ago because in our practice, less than 5% of children were chronically ill, probably closer to 0, because, as you mentioned already, the normal state of our children is health. Our children's immune systems are programmed to heal. They want to heal. They're designed to heal. So the big question is, why aren't our children healing, and why are they on the fast track to chronic disease?
I think it's interesting that you talk about everything you listed there, just about everything you listed. There's so many things that genuinely I can say, yeah, I hear you listing these issues. And I was thinking, oh, well, isn't that just normal nowadays? But it really isn't, or it shouldn't be, such as allergies. I think it's incredible the number of allergies and reflux and colic in babies. These are things that are on just an astronomical uptick. And so I'm curious, how do you see natural medicine helping to address these challenges? What can parents be doing with natural medicine to help?
Well, there's so much that they can do, that you can act at home to the best advantage of your child. And so there's a lot of things that you can categorize in the space of natural. Certainly making sure that they have a healthy spine and nervous system, as that controls all the other systems of the body, making sure their immune system is working properly. So having a pediatric chiropractor evaluating your child regularly is key and core to the foundation of good and natural health. Also making sure that you're eating a clean diet, that you're getting your children involved in the process of, what does organic really mean? What are the levels of that? Can we grow our own food? Where does food come from? If you need to go to get it, bring your kids to a farmer's market, to a farm. Actually let them put their hands and feet in the dirt. I know that seems crazy to some people, but that's what, not in your group, but to the population at large. and but allowing them to actually be involved in the process of seeing where does our food come from, and then how do we prepare it naturally. So not a bag of Doritos that can have a shelf life, or a Twinkie that 10 years from now, or a Big Mac could be the same as it is now, because that's not actually food. That could, that you can eat it, but you could eat it, I don't know, a piece of dirt or something, and you'd probably be more nutritional value, and sometimes in that. And so we want to make sure that they're eating the right foods, and that they're getting the right sleep, that we have rest, that we have good family and faith and values, that we're sharing dinners at the dinner table, that we're asking about our days. I mean, these things shouldn't be like, oh, crazy ideas. This is stuff that we always did generation after generation, but somehow now there's a disconnect. Some of that has to do with our devices and kids having so much screen time and other influences. Let's round that back. Let's minimize that. Not only is that eliminate or minimize your EMF exposure, which is also detrimental. And we need to get out, and I said, your feet in the dirt and grounding, but doing things that are family focused and faith focused, so that we can bring that back. And that goes all into the idea of living holistically and living naturally, and doing that within our family itself.
One of the best places to start for any mom or dad out there is to start with breakfast. Instead of giving your child dessert for breakfast, they should have a high protein diet. So even if you take the petroleum dyes out of the Fruit Loops and the Cheerios, that's still not a good breakfast. You want to be able to give them eggs and Greek yogurt and high protein breakfast to start the day, to sustain them, and to make sure they can be at 100% for the school year as well.
I think that is so awesome. Those little practical steps that you put forward for how parents can start trying to improve their children's health. And also, you're right, that is everything you covered does contribute to a genuinely holistic approach to wellness, because it's not just individual things isolated. It's all of this does connect and contribute to our health and wellness. I'm a huge fan of moving to high protein diet and getting away from the sugars and carbs, and not just the dyes. Dyes definitely are a huge part of it, but not the only thing. Do you have any short stories you might be able to share from your practice that can illustrate the power of these natural approaches?
Yes, certainly. It's a regular occurrence, because the advantage that we have when those 10,000 children have come into our practice is we know the body's designed to heal. It's programmed to heal. We know the nervous system, the brain and nerves control all the functions of the body, including the entire immune system, the hormones, the biochemistry, how the body heals and how it responds to the environment. So you have to make sure the spine and nervous system is functioning properly. But the one thing we know about any child that comes in is whatever level of health they're at, they have potential for more health, more well-being, a stronger immune system, better brain function, a healthier gut. And so that's going to be our approach. But, we always, one of my favorite types of patients that come in are those parents that have that child that, they get what they consider a sickness, where they have runny nose and fever and cold or ear infections, and they have that for many weeks. They go to their pediatrician. The pediatrician gives them drugs, and then they're okay. And then a few weeks later, they're sick again, and they're on the merry-go-round, and they go back for more drugs, and they come in. This has gone on 5 or 10 times during the year. So whatever they've been doing hasn't worked, and it makes sense to try something different. So I remember, one of our appearances on Inside Edition, seen by 5 million people, that, one of our patients was sharing, my son had ear infection after ear infection and antibiotic after antibiotic and side effects from the antibiotic. And then after, 2 visits in our practice, no more ear infections, and her son healed. So that's a regular occurrence in our practice.
And I think one of the biggest things to just add in is people that came in with one child because whatever the situation was, they might have been vaccine injured, they might have had been on the spectrum, or as Stu said, just recurrent ear infections or something that they couldn't quite get a handle on. And so they had gone down the allopathic and medical path. They've done all the drugs, they did all the visits, and nothing was working. And they had a child with a certain result. We saw those miracles and those changes where we were able to get the child to their peak state of health. And of course, that's different for every child, but maximizing that. Then mom, while she's under care with one child, gets pregnant again, goes through that pregnancy under care in the office, has the baby, brings the baby in. And of course, after being several decades into practice, we've seen people for a long time. Now she has that child as a toddler, as a 5-year-old, and makes the comparison of the child before when they listened to the other experts giving them advice and they led down the path of sickness versus when they went through our advice and did the natural approach to health. They saw a completely different child where they were maximizing every aspect of their health and potential. And it was really this beautiful dichotomy that moms were able to see and say, oh my gosh, if only someone had told me sooner that there was this easy natural solution, I wish we would have known that.
It's not just about having a child that doesn't have symptoms. It's about having a child that's expressing the greatest God-given health potential in their life.
That is so true. It is easy. Sure, we don't want the symptoms, but why stop there? Go for, you should be wanting your kids to be at their absolute peak. And you're right, it is different for every child, but that is really awesome and very encouraging to hear. I think it's so fantastic that we're seeing this shift, an overall shift, not everywhere, but an overall shift towards significantly more health. You mentioned vaccines. I wanted to shift a little bit over to some of the most interesting and controversial things that have been happening recently, specifically with the CDC's recent changes to vaccination schedules. I was really impressed to see that happen because I think there's been so much blowback, as we all know, and people questioning science and medical institutions because of recent scenarios in the last decade, especially most especially COVID, seem to really wake people up quite a bit. What do you make of the recent changes to the vaccine schedule for the CDC? Do you think that they're making a move in the right direction?
Well, they are making some changes, such as separating out the chickenpox vaccine from the MMR. They, looking at delaying the hepatitis B vaccine. They're, eliminating the mandate for the COVID vaccine in kids. And, this is not an easy topic for many parents to navigate because they want to believe their government. They want to believe their pediatrician. And and we're looking at the sickest generation of kids in the world. So following their advice isn't working. And, I think what was the silver lining of the pandemic was that, everyone was told that if you get the COVID vaccine, you're not going to get it and you're not going to transmit it to anyone else. So that was a lie and it wasn't true. And so that opens up the door. What else are they lying about? And what people understand about the childhood vaccine schedule from the multi-billion-dollar multinational pharmaceutical corporation is that vaccines are totally safe, they're totally effective, and everyone has to have them was a complete lie as well. It's a lot worse than anyone could imagine. And the studies are coming out, like Ron Johnson just had the hearing showing that the children that were vaccinated have multitudes more chronic disease than the children that were not vaccinated. So God did not forget to put 72 vaccines in our children's bloodstreams when they were born, because that's how many you need from when a child is born to get all the way through school is 72 of them. And not only are they not safe, and they've never been studied for safety, that was just shown in the Senate hearing as well, because they said that there were 661 studies, and the great attorney Aaron that showed that the vaccines were tested against a placebo. And the great attorney Aaron Siri testified in front of the Senate hearing that that's never happened. It's a complete lie. There's never been a study of a childhood vaccine that's been tested against a placebo. And the gold standard is you test any drug going to market against a placebo, an inert, placebo. That's never happened. And so they're not tested for safety. They're not tested for the amount of accumulation of the aluminum and the other chemicals in them in the child's body. So, the children are able to develop a stronger immune system without vaccines. And, parents, really need to do their research and not just trust their pediatrician who hasn't had the education, because the pediatricians that we know admitted that in medical school, they didn't learn anything about vaccines except where to stick the needle and what the schedule was. So, vaccines are dangerous. They are not effective like they say, and parents really need to, stand up and protect their kids. And you just look at the first vaccine that they mandate for our brand new babies, hours old, is the hepatitis B vaccine. And the only way you get hepatitis B is from intravenous drugs or sex. And our babies are not exposed to that. They're not at risk. Just like the COVID vaccine, children were not at risk for any complications from COVID. According to the CDC, there were no healthy children that died from COVID, yet they wanted them all to receive the vaccines that have never been tested for safety. So if you look at the first vaccine with the hepatitis B, they test the mom if they're Hep B positive, and 99+% of them are not. So there's no reason for babies to get a hepatitis B vaccine, which also has a healthy dose of aluminum in it, which is a powerful neurotoxin that gets into the brain tissues. So, a lot of kids fare worse than others, but it's not necessary for anyone. So, for parents, navigating this, they really need to, do their own research. And I can tell you, in 30 years of practice, we've seen thousands and thousands of children harmed from vaccines. We've never seen one child harmed from not being vaccinated. And just to put a bow on this, our grandparents, their generation and prior, if a child had chickenpox or measles, they would have a chickenpox party because they would want other kids to be exposed. Because the part that will be coming out soon is that the naturally occurring viruses like the chickenpox, measles, which are nothing more than a fever and a rash
that you're supposed to get
for a week in a healthy child, it actually protects your immune system, builds and strengthens it. So when you're an adult, you won't get, you have lower incidences of cancer and heart disease. So having childhood illness and receiving the benefit from it, there's studies and credentialized journals that show that there's less incidence of cancer and heart disease because it strengthens your body instead of weakening your body with the vaccines.
Yes, these were not dangerous conditions. They were inconvenient when we had all of a sudden moms going out of the house to work and you had two working parents and they said, oh, we don't want to have to stay home and miss work and be home with our kids for 5 days or 3 days or whatever it was to have the chicken pox. So let's give them something to try to prevent this. And you know what? Benefit, it makes billions of dollars for the pharmaceutical companies. So it's really crazy that we started this. You can jump back and every once in a while you'll circulate things like the old episode of the Brady Bunch that I'm old enough to have grown up on, and they're like, "Whoa, we have the measles. Like we get to stay home, no shots. We would just get to have a couple of days off of school," and that's what it was. So now we have the sickest generation we've ever had. We have in the U.S. the most additives into our food system allowed worldwide. We have the most vaccines given to our children worldwide, and yet we have the sickest children that in the world, and we have the highest medical costs. And so nothing about this makes sense. If vaccines were so safe, they wouldn't have to take liability away from the vaccine manufacturers. So that is the only, the only thing that's made that happened with. If that happened with car seats and you had millions of kids affected, the manufacturer would be out of business. So we don't need safety. We need to make sure, and yes, safety is a good thing, but we need to make sure parents understand that your kids were meant to be healthy. We need to start giving them the chance to do that. And there are millions of kids around the world who are unvaccinated, like ours, who are completely healthy. We have lots of friends that are chiropractors who have multiple generations that have always said no to vaccines, and they are the healthiest people we know. So we need to really reevaluate this and empower parents to get informed. Don't always take everything at face value. Really do your due diligence and do that research. You never want to have to ask, or say the comment of like, I wish I had known. I wish someone would have told me. Really go out and stretch and ask those questions.
And the last point on this too, many parents, that might disagree. Oh, you're not vaccinating your children. You're putting mine at risk. Well, that's a fallacy, because if their vaccines that they want to give their kids work and their kids are protected, they have nothing to fear from the unvaccinated kids. So that's a complete fallacy. And, it's all about choice. And, parents need to get informed and make whatever decision is best for their kids.
I completely agree. I think that you guys touched on the most important pieces. Actually, I want to pull in some parts of what you said about both food and pharma. So you talk about the food supply and how really we need to be cleaning that up. And then pharmaceutical overreach has been growing and pushing this on parents and Americans, and really all around the world, although it's so much worse here. So sometimes I think people feel like because we have RFK and Trump and others taking steps forward, that, we don't have to fight anymore. We don't have to do anything else because it's all getting done. But the reality is that there's a lot of work still to do. So when you're looking at cleaning up the food supply or trying to continue to reduce pharmaceutical overreach, what are the most urgent reforms that you see needed in those areas?
Mm-hmm. Well, Bobby Kennedy is the best HHS secretary in the history of our country, and he's doing great things for cleaning up the corruption and for doing radical transparency, which he, is shedding the light on different things, and that's all important. But the big picture is, what we shouldn't be relying on the government for the health of our kids. The parents are the ones that need to make those decisions, and they're responsible for their kids, and they need to do better. And the government administration, unfortunately, is probably going to be changing in a few years with good or different people, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going to be the head of HHS for eternity. So it's up to us to take control now and not wait on the government. But one of the biggest educational reforms that the government can do is to let people know that the body does know how to heal itself without pharmaceutical products. Thank goodness they're there for emergencies and for life-threatening situations. But one of what I consider, which I'll be sharing at the Moms for Liberty Summit in Orlando, is the ground zero for a parent understanding how the body works, and if they're going to end up with a chronically ill child, which means they'll be sick for the rest of their lives, or if they're going to have an exceptionally healthy child. And by the way, if they're going to have a chronically ill child, there's so many ramifications for that. The top causes of divorce and bankruptcy are having a sick child in the family. And also, that child may not be able to play sports. 77% of our kids will not qualify for the military. So this is a huge problem, and also an economic problem to have a sick child. So it's imperative that you make all the right choices so that you can have a healthy child. It is a choice. And number one on the list is understanding a fever, what a fever means for that child. Because if I'm in a room of 1,000 parents and I posed a question, how many of you believe the fever is part of the cure, or is it part of the problem? 9 out of 10 people will answer the fever is part of the cure. They understand that. But the next question I ask is, how many of you give your children drugs to lower the fever? 9 out of 10 hands go up. So it's a big contradiction. And that's one of the reasons we have sick kids, because what happens when you give a drug to lower the fever? The fever, the virus will lie dormant. It can mutate, come back later, and cause more problems. The one thing we want parents to know is that your child's body is smart, and that it's smart because it recognizes there's a virus present. So what does it do? It raises the temperature up. And at a higher temperature, in certain levels, the temperature can get to like 102, interferon's produced, which is a virus killer. So the virus and the bacteria cannot live in a higher temperature environment. So let's celebrate the fever. The fever is great. The fever is healthy. The body is maturing, it's strengthening, it's healing, it's developing new, healthier pathways. So when the fever gets up high enough, it kills the virus, and you're healthier after the fever than you are before the fever. Now, 99% of the fevers are normal fevers, but that less than 1% where there could be febrile seizures, parents are fearful of that. But the medical literature is clear. There's no negative sequelae. There's no negative consequences to febrile seizures. It doesn't look nice. It looks a little scary sometimes, but it's very rare. And it's actually the body's mechanism to even produce more heat to kill the virus. So if parents understand the symptom of a fever is a healthy response, keep the child comfortable, keep them hydrated. And most of the time, we're not treating the child, we're treating the parental distress. We have to give the parents the peace and understanding to know that the fever is healthy. There's no other complicating symptoms. Let the fever run the course. You're going to have a healthier child, because if you keep suppressing the child's immune system with drugs, it's going to weaken and say, I don't need to do the work, and I'm just going to keep getting weaker over the years. So just like getting stronger muscles, you push against resistance. To get a stronger immune system, your child needs to be exposed to everything, have a clear functioning nervous system, good nutrition, a lot of love, and then they can handle all of these things and benefit from them. And the same thing with a cough. The cough is a healthy response. The body's smart. It's getting rid of the toxins, infections in the lungs. It's coughing them out. Why would you ever suppress the cough and leave the toxin and the poison in the lungs to come back and cause more problems? It may take a few hours, a few weeks, but when it's done coughing, your body's healthier than it was before. It strengthens, and you don't have the reoccurrences. So that's the one thing the government hasn't touched upon yet. That's the core of our practice and our teachings, is understanding the body heals itself, and understanding that symptoms are not the problem. They're the way the body's healing itself.
Well, that answers a question I was going to ask you, I think, which is, what's the biggest myth about natural medicine you would debunk? That kind of sounds like it, quite frankly, right there. But I want to tie in that also into another question, and because you talk about fevers, and that brings up another one of the biggest concerns that media loves to drum up fear about, and that's measles. And you mentioned that earlier too. We always hear that, right? Anytime you discuss medical exemptions or medical freedom, health freedom, then the media always seems to talk about measles and the rise of measles. So just help us unpack, what is the true risk of getting measles? Should people actually be concerned about that? Should we fear measles? Or is it really important that we maintain a certain level of immunization in the community in order to keep our risks low?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, measles has a benefit that it will help prevent heart disease and cancer when you're an adult, because it helps strengthen and build the immune system. It helps the body work better. And measles in a healthy child is nothing more than a fever and a rash for several days or a week. And if you're doing all the natural approaches, which are endless, but you have that the nervous system controls the immune system. So you want to make sure the spine and nervous system are functioning properly and clear. You want to make sure they're getting great nutrition, vitamin A and other nutrients that are important for measles. But the media sensationalizes everything and creates the fear. And like in the Texas cases, the children that they point to didn't die from measles. And the famed attorney we're mentioning earlier already, they've interviewed the family, they've got the medical records, they've shown that they died from other comorbidities, but they want to hang it on the measles. Just like in COVID, if you got hit by a bus and died, or got gunshot and you died, but you tested positive for COVID, they say it was a COVID death. But COVID, they didn't die from COVID, they died with COVID, which was inconsequential. Same thing with measles, but children that are immune compromised can be more at risk, but that's very rare. And
unfortunately, that's with anything. If they're immune compromised, they're immune compromised. And measles was one of those things that, like, his fun pastime would be studying, where are they saying the outbreak is now? And what's the real statistics on that? And they're claiming it's this, but actually all of those people were fully vaccinated, but they're so he would just debunk it every time. And we have decades of these studies to show that it wasn't even, they're trying to make it like, there's this outbreak and let's blame the unvaxxed. No. The reality was that was in, fully vaxxed people, and they still had it. Now, can exceptions occur? Absolutely. And can people get measles? Is it easily transmissible? Yeah, it is. But the truth is that most of the time, that's a really passive virus that is, not detrimental. It actually has advantages to getting later on.
Like in Texas, there was many years ago, there was a big mumps outbreak in college students, and in the sensationalized headlines took over. But in that particular case, and you can look it up, 100% of the college students that came down with the mumps were previously vaccinated. So vaccines, all of them, they wane the protective immunity that they're supposed to have. And they only point to the ones that are unvaccinated, but the ones that were vaccinated also get those diseases as well. And I'd put my money on the children that weren't compromised and have the chemicals in their body to recover better. So the ones that are living the natural wellness, holistic lifestyle are going to fare much, much better. I mean, our daughter at 16 months had a severe case of whooping cough and went through it naturally. It took 3 months, and it was such a blessing because her immune system strengthened, her lungs strengthened through the process, where we know many others that had pertussis or whooping cough at the same time that went the medical route with the antibiotics and steroids. They all have asthma and allergies and have immune compromised because their body got weaker instead of stronger. So, you're always monitoring if there's severe complications or if they're spiraling out of control. That's where the medical system may come into play. But the vast majority of it is a normal, natural process that our kids are supposed to go through as part of their God-given right of childhood passage.
So if a parent is choosing to delay or just not participating at all in vaccination schedules and going that natural path for their children, what advice would you give to them if they're receiving any pushback from friends or family for this decision?
Yeah, that's a great question. That happens all the time. There's a lot of pressure there. I mean, the pediatricians actually will harass the parents, and it's a regular, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of times they try to coerce the parents. They gaslight them. They don't do informed consent. They don't show them the package insert that surrounds every vaccine with the hundreds of diseases that vaccine can cause. They don't share with them the VAERS system, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, where all the millions of side effects are reported to. So they're
They
not
scare
getting
them. They
properly.
threaten to kick them out of the practice, which could be the best blessing,
Yeah.
incidentally.
So those parents need to make their own decision, because if they're coerced by the pressure from the in-laws or the neighbors or the pediatrician, and that child has a reaction or is killed, they're going to have to live with that for the rest of their lives. So they cannot trust anyone else. They have to trust themselves. But delaying or spacing out the vaccines is a bad idea, because it could be the first vaccine given to any child at any time that can cause that child to regress or could be killed. So, if they have enough distrust with their pediatrician and the CDC, they're not going to follow their recommendations. Maybe they shouldn't be following them at all. So it gives them a false sense of security, because, they don't do a proper medical visit when they vaccinate a child. So they're not doing a proper history. They're not doing any proper evaluation before that child gets a vaccination. They're not checking to see if that child has any allergies to the ingredients in the vaccine. They're not checking to see if that child has any mitochondria dysfunction or cellular weaknesses. So that child could be vulnerable on their first shot, given at any time through their childhood. So it's very important that parents understand this. And also, if you're going to delay or space out the vaccines, it's a contradiction to the hygiene hypothesis and the way that child's supposed to develop their immune system naturally. You can't believe, well, I'm going to give my child some vaccines or space them out, and I want my child to develop the God-given way naturally with a healthy nervous system and organic, nutrient-dense food, and do it that way. So, it's a contradiction to space them out and to delay them as well. And but parents really need to know all the hundreds of ingredients that are in the vaccines. They need to know how they interact together. They need to know about their personal history of their child. They need to know how to report the side effects and know all the information, because it's the biggest decision they might make in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like, listening to what Stu said, I like to endorse, you saying, oh, they're delaying, they're spacing them out. But the reality is that what he said can happen. And it's so sad. We've just heard the stories so many times, again and again, over so many years. And it's especially traumatic when they have a child that they were delaying, they were spacing out. And then they went to the pediatrician because the child was sick. They hadn't been in a long time. They hadn't vaxxed. And then they have their pediatrician or someone else in the practice coming in, beating them up and saying, like, we need to catch your child up today. You missed XYZ. Let's just do this. And going ahead, and then the child having a reaction, because of course, you never, if you're going to vax them, you never want to do that when they're immune compromised and when they're already sick. And so it compounds that and sets them up for more reactions. And this is unfortunately something that's routinely done. And so it makes it so much worse. And we also see, I would throw in that it's not, there's nefarious people behind a lot of this. When we look at Big Pharma and the big picture, as well as the lobbyists that are behind this in Washington, because when you look at states, even for example, like New York State and what they went through in these last few years, and all their vaccine exemptions being taken away, if people said, I want to have my unvaxxed child or my partially vaxxed child tested for titers to see if they still have the titers, if they truly only cared about the disease prevention, if someone had natural titers showing that they have immunity to that, that would absolutely meet the need for, okay, great, you get an exemption. But you know what? That's not good enough. They want kids that had good titers, that showed that they had naturally acquired that, or maybe years prior had had a single vaccine, but still had full titers to it. They said, nope, that's not enough. You need to get vaxxed, get the new ones, get doubled up, get caught up, or you're out of here. And so we know that there's just bad thoughts behind it.
We have countless board certified pediatricians and double, triple board certified medical doctors that all concur exactly what we're sharing with you about the childhood vaccine schedule.
That is so brave and fantastic to have you guys share this information, because it isn't always isn't always welcomed with open arms to just have an independent thought, for sure, and even ask a question, which is very unfortunate that we're living in these times. But I really appreciate you guys sharing all your experience and knowledge, and the encouragement to parents to go ahead and get informed, to take some time to do the research and really make the right decision for their family. So I know we're right at time, but I want to give you a chance to say any final thoughts that you'd like to share, maybe something that we didn't get a chance to cover, and please make sure to tell where people can find and follow you.
Thank you. I would say a couple things. One is, in the simplest terms, we need to get back to living the way our great-grandparents did, our grandparents did. And you know what? As piggybacking to what you just said, they didn't have all these vaccines. And you know what? My great-grandma lived to be 104. So they didn't need that. They were living off the land and living a natural lifestyle, and they were healthier for it. And so predominantly that's the message, where today, I liken our kids. I say, we're not living with, they name every generation, right? You're Generation X, you're Generation Y, you're Generation Z. Our kids, I call Generation RX. They're living in the drug cabinet. They're living out of the medicine cabinet. They are drugged womb to tomb, and we can take you right through the cycle. That is the best thing for Big Pharma. That is the worst thing for you and your family. So we need to change that. And it's sad that I thank you for those kind words you said about us, but it's sad that we have to be commended for giving truth and just shining light on things that should be so natural. And yet our friends and us we're put under attack and assault for actually saying things that should just be natural. And so be brave out there, especially I'm talking right now to the moms. And I want to say, if you've gone through something with your child, if you are currently, or maybe you're pregnant and you're having a child, let that mama bear inside of you awaken. Be the light and be the beacon for your friends, for your neighbors. Don't let people pull you down for asking those hard questions. Don't be afraid and be held back or be coerced into something that you regret later on. Stand up for truth. Stand up for your child. And this is how together we will change the next generation, because you are not alone, mama. You are part of millions of us, and we are worldwide, and we are strong and powerful. And together we are going to change that, and for the betterment of our children, for the generations to come. And that is our legacy.
Yeah.
Amen.
I wish I went first after that, but one of the things for parents to understand also is, 99% of the childhood illnesses that they were vaccinating for, not 99% of vaccines, the vaccine, the natural occurring illnesses declined by 99% when the vaccines were introduced. So they were already on their natural decline, those illnesses, or those infections, from sanitation and better living conditions and better nutrition that we had the first half of the last century. So all of that cleaned up all of those diseases. And you can see the graph where it goes down to almost zero. And that's when the vaccines were introduced. And they're taking credit for the design of it. And that's where the whole PR propaganda campaign started. So the natural approach was already working prior to the vaccines. And now we see the whole rise of the illness in 1986, when all the vaccines were introduced, when the liability was taken away. So anyway, parents, have a tremendous responsibility for that child and protecting them and loving them and empowering them to be as healthy as they can. And, for anyone out there that, is struggling with a child that has reoccurring issues or is on medication, reach out, contact us, because we will point you in the right direction. Every child deserves to be healthy. And we have moms that will sit across the consultation table with us on their first visit, bringing their child for help. Some of them drive hours and hours to come see us. And that mom doesn't even believe anymore that there's hope for their child, for better health and well-being, and to be off the drugs, because now all of their friends' kids are sick and on drugs. They just think it's normal. It's just, the new black, sick kids on drugs. And that doesn't have to be. And the child that you have now is designed by God to be healthy, to thrive, to be able to do all that they're intended to do. And it's up to you as the mom and the dad to be able to, not interfere with that normal, natural process and nourish them, empower them, because that child will have the opportunity to reach their optimum God-given potential in life. And that's our mission, is to give every child every advantage in health, wellness, and life, to be 100%, to be the leaders, teachers, and preachers of tomorrow. So, we appreciate being with you today.
Awesome. Yeah, that is so encouraging. Thank you so much. So now if people are going to reach out, where can they find you?
There's two places directly. The website, doctorswarner.com, DRS Warner, that's DRSWARNER.com. We'll have all of our content with videos and our conferences and our strategies. And then also you can email us directly at doctorswarner@protonmail.com. That's DRSWARNER @proton, PROTONMAIL.com. And, we'll be happy to help. It's been our lifelong passion and, to help people. So we're here.
Well, that is fantastic. And we'll make sure that we link to that in the description as well, so people can easily access you. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and encouragement. And we look forward to seeing you at Summit.
Woohoo! All right. We look forward to it as well. We can't wait. And thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
What a power-packed conversation. If the new inverted food pyramid signals a national pivot to real nutrient-dense food, well, thank God. And parents have the momentum to match, starting tonight at dinner and tomorrow in the cafeteria. Fingers crossed. In the meantime, here are 3 quick tips of things you can do at home. Do a 10-minute pantry sweep for the ultra-processed snacks and added sugar breakfasts. Replace them with protein-forward whole food options. That's going to make a big difference. Number 2, bring this episode to your school's wellness committee and ask vendors to align menus with the new guidance. More protein, more produce, and healthy fats. Fewer refined carbs and UPFs, please. Number 3, share this interview with one other family and compare simple swaps you'll make this week. It's always easier when you do it with a friend. Together, we can turn top-down policy into bottom-up change for our kids. For more information, revisit the Eat Real Food highlights in the updated dietary guidelines for Americans and the newly released pyramid. Then put them to work in your home and in your school district. Dr. Stu and Teri Warner reminded us that true wellness starts at home, like pretty much everything else, with informed, courageous parents who aren't afraid to ask tough questions and stand up for what is right. In this case, our children's health. As we face a world where chronic illness is too often accepted as normal, and everyone pretty much expects to have a pill to solve any problem, their message is clear. You are not alone, and you have the power to make a difference. So let's take their advice to heart and reconnect with the wisdom of past generations by prioritizing natural living and refusing to settle for anything less than our children's God-given potential. If you're ready to take the next step, you can connect with the Warners at doctorswarner.com or via email at doctorswarner@protonmail.com. Together, we can all build a healthier future for our kids and our communities, which is so important because all of the hard work we're doing to fight all these other woke ideologies, honestly, it's really not going to matter that much if everyone is too sick to function. So if this is a topic that has gotten you really excited, you can learn more in the MAHA toolkit under the resource library at M4Lacademy.org. And if you're ready to get engaged, well, head over to momsforliberty.org to find your local chapter, or maybe even consider starting one. In the words of James Madison, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty, which of course is the mission of M4L Academy. Thank you for joining us today. Class dismissed.